Welcome again to another edition of Secrets of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Adras. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. As you know, we try to talk about some subjects that impact our families and our own individual selves in light of this revolution in longevity. That covers a very, very wide range of topics. And one of those very wide-ranging topics that really speak to a lot of the baby boomer generation has to do with the activities of the National Council of Jewish Women and the whole question of abortion and how we're looking at that right now. It's a very, very difficult issue, and many of us remember when, in the about 50 some years ago, when we perhaps had marched for abortion rights and reproductive rights for all women. And now things seem to be, let's put it this way, a little bit changing. So we have invited an expert in this area to come and enlighten us and talk to us about some of the things that are happening just within the American Jewish community. And so we are very pleased to welcome Shira Zemel to this week's edition of Secrets of Meaning. Shira is from the National Council of Jewish Women and is the Abortion Access Campaign co-director. So Shira, welcome. It's nice to see you. How you doing?
I am so honored to be here. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. This is a tough subject. And I'd say it's probably easy to say politically controversial now more so than ever in light of the last year or so of legal opinions and issues around the states and continuing pronouncements on the presumptive presidential candidates. I don't know why they use the word presumptive, but anyway, that's another story for another time. We have lots to explore, but I want to ask you first, just in case there's a couple of people who may have missed that class. What's the National Council of Jewish Women? What is it? How has it evolved? How did you come to be with it?
Wonderful. So National Council of Jewish Women is one of our historic legacy Jewish institutions. This year, NCJW is celebrating 130 years, which I'm very proud to be part of this amazing institution and legacy organization. The story of how NCJW came to be was in the 1890s. Hannah G. Solomon was an activist in Chicago, and the story goes that she was invited to the World's Fair in Chicago, which at that time it sounds like was more like a think tank, like a public think tank of people coming together and sharing ideas. And when she was invited to be part of this group of people having conversations and engaging in ideas, she was asked to serve coffee. And she said, well, I'm not here to serve coffee. I'm here to contribute. And she went from that day and she founded National Council of Jewish Women. And we've been around ever since. NCJW was the first Jewish organization on Ellis Island helping welcome immigrants to this country. We have a long storied history of supporting women, children, and families in this country to thrive for a better world. And as it relates to the work on reproductive freedom and abortion access, one thing I like to share with people is that part of our early history is that NCJW, as part of its work with immigrants, helped find some of the country's earliest birth control centers, which later became Planned Parenthood, to help immigrants who are new to this country get the care that they needed. And so our work in that space and all issues that impact women, children, and families have grown and evolved over the years. We have sections all over the country, and I work at our national office in Washington, D.C. And the story of how I came to work with NCJW, so I've spent my whole career working at the intersection of Jewish social justice and public policy and really working on bringing our deeply held Jewish beliefs into the public square, because I deeply believe that Judaism offers something to the current conversation, and particularly around this issue of reproductive health rights and justice. And so, yeah, the opportunity as NCJW really as we knew that where the Supreme Court was headed, once it decided that it would take up the Dobbs case and that Roe would be overturned, to really create a broad-based campaign to engage the full Jewish community in this fight. This is a real opportunity for me to do what I've done my whole career and be part of building this campaign. And I can tell you a little bit more about why this issue is personal to me, but we can keep talking.
Feel free to bring that in. Are women under attack in this country right now?
Yes, I believe that the women are under attack. People with the capacity to get pregnant are under attack. Absolutely.
I think it's important for people to understand that when you're talking about this program, this abortion access campaign, but you use that phrase about reproductive health rights. We do a lot of work at Jewish Sacred Aging on workshops on the Jewish approach to health and wellness. And I think once you open it, this is not, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, this is not just a focus on can a woman terminate a pregnancy if certain situations exist, but it really is a broader approach to access to healthcare. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that is, given the healthcare system in the country, this is really, really, really important.
Great. So I use the terms reproductive health, rights, and justice purposely because I see those as three different things. In getting to your point about like healthcare, so reproductive health is like basic vital healthcare that people with the capacity to reproduce need. So that includes everything from comprehensive sex education to birth control to basic OBGYN care, which includes access to abortion care. It also includes fertility treatments. It includes, the many types of health risks to a person, to a woman, because they have reproductive health organs like the breast cancer and uterine cancer and all these types of things. So reproductive health is like broadly all the type of vital health care that folks who can reproduce need. Reproductive rights are legal rights. So with the loss of Roe versus Wade, we lost certain reproductive rights that for over 50 years was guaranteed to us. And then reproductive justice is a framework that was brought in the early 90s by Black activists who said that really what reproductive justice is, it's the ability to choose to have a family or not have a family and be able to parent the families that we choose to have and like vital in communities that will sustain us and meet our basic needs. So I think that's really important. What you point to, like this is really broad because it's not just about the ability to have an abortion. It's about the ability to thrive and to be able to like be in a country that like meets our most basic needs and allows us, if we choose to have a families, for those families to flourish. So we approach this issue through abortion access because that's like what they've been chipping away at for 50 years and what sort of has been rolled back most recently. But they're not stopping with abortion access, right? I mean, most recently we saw that in Alabama, the status of an embryo was ruled on by the state Supreme Court. So that challenges IVF, but they're coming after gender affirming care, our birth control pills, like they're coming after everything. And we believe that abortion access is, a way to bring people into the larger fight, because that's where they attacked first. And because, our Jewish values have something very clear to say about that.
Who's the they?
The anti-abortion extremists.
And how much of
the Christian nationalist religious right.
How much do you think this is? I'll just say it, anti-women.
I think it's broader than that, though, because I think it's anti-Black and brown people. I think it's anti-immigrants. I think it's anti-poor people. and anti-women, but it's not just women who can have abortions, so that's also, as I think about talking to grandparents, and something I'm constantly talking to my own grandparents about is like also reframing this too. There are people who don't identify as women, non-binary people, trans men who also need access to abortion care. So yes, they're anti people who aren't, don't look just like them and pray just like them, including women.
As many people who may be watching or listening to this, the Jewish tradition is fairly, replete with permissive text from Exodus to Mishnah Oholot on this conversation. And you could spend, a long time just tracking all the viewpoints on pregnancy termination, birth control, one of the Feldman book is back there somewhere. And in the Reform Responds across the denominational lines. If somebody wants to learn more about this, okay, is there on the NCJW website, and you'll tell us what that is there a repository of text or Jewish approaches? What is it? And if I want to access it quietly, what's the website I go to?
Great. So JewsForAbortionAccess.org is our campaign website. And there, to answer your question, you can access a great study guide called the Torah of Reproductive Freedom. Even if you just Google Torah of Reproductive Freedom, National Council of Jewish Women, or Jews for Abortion Access, you should be able to get it. And the Torah of Reproductive Freedom is a great resource, and it does exactly that, Rabbi Address. It starts with the proof text or the source text in the book of Exodus. It's in Parshat Mishpatim, which is like sort of the first place we see that's written down, where our tradition sort of grapples with this idea of what happens if a pregnant person miscarries. And it's sort of the first place we can see that our Judaism does not believe that fetus is a status of personhood. And then the Torah of Reproductive Freedom builds from there. So it tracks the Mishnah texts and a lot of different texts throughout centuries where the rabbis and others affirm continually that abortion is permitted and even required when the life of the pregnant person is at stake. And I love some of these texts because even more recent texts, but still hundreds of years ago, there's even broader definitions of health. And it's not just about about that there's an understanding that even a person's mental health and what the mother needs to be able to thrive, then that should be taken into consideration as well. So I love these texts, and I love being able to go all the way back and see that Judaism's always grappled with this. And I think it makes us really, really, really compelling advocates in this moment to go up against the religious right, who have for too long claimed the narrative around religion in this country, around religion and abortion in this country, for us to know that our tradition has long said something completely counter to what they're saying, and to be really loud in the public square, with our tradition and bring our own voices to it.
Once again, Shira, the website is
JewsForAbortionAccess.org.
The program that you co-direct, okay, the Abortion Access Campaign, how is it rolling out? Does it vary from state to state? How does somebody get involved with it? Talk to me about all that, because this is real basic stuff.
Okay. So, I'll start with the end. JewsForAbortionAccess.org. Go there, but if you want to go to JewsForAbortionAccess.org/sign up, that's how you can get on our campaign mailing list. And there's a lot of entry points and ways to get involved. So the way the campaign came to be, it was actually first launched in about 10 months, maybe eight to 10 months before the Dobbs decision, because NCJW knew, and reproductive health rights and justice advocates knew, where the court was headed on this. And we wanted to be sure that, even though the Jewish community has long, 83% in Pew studies show that Jews will polling consistently that abortion should be legal in most or all cases. Because the Jewish community has long held this viewpoint, and obviously our tradition has held this viewpoint, that there was a real opportunity to organize the Jewish community and bring them to this moment as we were about to roll back our rights for 50 years. And so we launched the campaign. We started by saying, like, get involved. You care about this. You've been marching about this for years and years, but we need you to march again. And then right when, do you remember like the leaked opinion that we got the leaked opinion of the Dobbs decision about a month before the decision came down? So right then we had a Jewish rally for abortion justice on Capitol Hill, and nearly 2,000 members of the Jewish community showed up in DC, flew from all over to march with us. Folks tuned in virtually. We launched the Jewish Fund for Abortion Access. We quickly connected with National Abortion Federation. We wanted to create the way for members of the Jewish community to give Jewishly and know that their dollar was going to support people directly impacted by the overturning of Roe. And so we raised in less than a year, we raised nearly $1 million, and that money went to our partners at NAF, who were providing travel, were providing financial relief for people who needed to travel for abortion care. And so the campaign I think this is how I like to say it. We create uniquely Jewish moments for abortion access because we believe that to counter a religious narrative in this country, like I was saying earlier, that there's only one, that religion and abortion cannot coexist. We believe that to counter that, we need to do deep culture change. And that includes creating deeply Jewish moments for abortion access and for reproductive freedom, which is why we have our annual Repro Shabbat, which probably many listeners have participated in at their local congregation. This year, over 2,000 Jewish communities participate in Repro Shabbat. It's every year the same week we read Parshat Mishpatim, which I was talking about earlier. So every year when Jews around the world read our texts that first talk about this issue, we say, like, this is our Jewish moment for reproductive health rights and justice, and let's affirm that. So we create uniquely Jewish moments. And then when there are broader moments within the Repro movement, we bring the Jewish community to bear. So just last week, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments for the mifepristone case. There's two abortion cases once again before the Supreme Court this term. One is about mifepristone. Mifepristone is one of two medications used for self-managed abortion care and miscarriage treatment. And anti-abortion doctors are trying to ban mifepristone, which has been FDA approved for over 20 years. It's safe. It is safer than Tylenol and penicillin. And yet these anti-abortion extremists want to ban it and say that the FDA want to question the FDA's authority. And so last week, the court heard the arguments, and NCJW, our campaign, turned out activists, and we had the largest showing of any group that showed up in front of the court. I'll send you some pictures afterwards, Rob Adjus, or folks can see it if they go to our website, like I mentioned. We had like over 100 different activists who got an email on a Friday, show up Tuesday morning, and we had signs, abortion bans are against my religion, and other Jewish signs. So we create Jewish moments, and we bring the Jews to the broader moments.
Are you getting any across the country? And are there NCJW chapters? I guess that's the right word.
We use the word sections, but yeah.
Excuse me. In most of the major cities in the United States of America, is it just U.S. based? Let me get at that.
Yeah, we do work in Israel, so we do have some staff and work in Israel. But yes, we are in the United States. We do have sections in most major cities, though there are a couple random where we don't have like a section as such, but we call it an action team. But really, wherever listeners are, there's a way to tap into NCJW locally, which you can find out on ncjw.org, or I'll also give folks my contact information if I can help folks connect in locally. And so, yeah, the work looks different. The work of our campaign broadly, there's a way to get involved, and then the work looks different locally depending on where folks are. So, for example, our NCJW Arizona section, they are currently collecting signatures they want to get a reproductive freedom ballot measure on the ballot in Arizona. So there's work like happening right now in Arizona, the way that the Florida Supreme Court just approved a ballot measure in Florida, which we could talk about. We have, I think, 5 different sections in Florida. So our local sections plug in the work on the ground locally and local reproductive justice like coalition groups. I was just on the phone yesterday with our section in Chicago. They have an amazing partnership with a clinic in Southern Illinois that gets a lot of travel from like all over the Midwest that trying to get to Illinois. And so they have a partnership with the clinic where they, as a direct service project, they create these abortion after kits that the clinic needs. And it's basically like a take-home bag for people who have just gotten abortion care to be able to take home and travel home with. I forgot it's like maxi pads and chocolate and like all types of things that the clinic says, like, let's give these to the patients after they get care. And we are the single-handed provider of those kits to the clinic. So yeah, the work looks unique and different depending on like how the section is involved, and we have a way to get involved nationally no matter where you live.
We're speaking with Shira Zemel from the National Council of Jewish Women, who is the co-director of the Abortion Access Campaign. And Shira has been walking us through this rather exciting and challenging, probably a good word, time. Shira, one of the things I got to ask you, my generation, okay, baby boomers, a lot of us marched in the old days when the music was better. And it was, by the way.
You're not a Taylor Swift fan, right?
My granddaughter worships at the altar. I, however, was just reflecting back on a documentary I watched about Paul Simon and Garfunkel, and kind of like that better. But that's enough. Another story. I know my daughter, who's in her 40s, is aware of this and is trying to teach her child, who's 15. Is there a disconnect within the generations to the kids coming up now, to those kids in high school or young Jewish women in college, who've taken this for granted? I mean, this has always been there for them. They understand the level of what's possible and what's happening here in health access and rights. And do they really understand this? And how are you trying to reach the Gen Xers, the millennials, the generation, whatever they're called? How are you doing that?
I think there is an awareness that that so much is on the line. I think about my friends. Her daughter Liz is a friend of mine going back. She's my camp counselor. But I think about like the public outcry I saw from people I consider my friends and peers when that Alabama decision came down. It was the last month around IVF. And I think I saw people like quickly make the connection like, oh, we lost abortion. So of course, like they're now coming for our IVF. And I wish that it didn't have to keep taking these like catastrophic, horrible rulings that directly impact people's like lives and well-being in that moment for people to like understand what's at stake. I think we live in really challenging times where even just saying we live in challenging times, like every day there's like another thing to be horrified by and outraged by and terrified about. How am I going to raise my kids and how am I going to talk to my kids about this? And it's a scary time to be a parent. I also have young kids. It's a scary time just to, how do we even like live, like go out of our houses every day? This is like, there's attacks from every direction. I think that part of the reason we need this campaign is because we have to constantly like the drumbeat. We can't get rid of the drumbeat because I think it's sometimes easier for us, and I do it too. Like when I think about the climate crisis, like I'm I get to work, I get involved. I'm an activist by nature, so I like get involved. But then it sort of like recedes in the background until like something else comes up. And so I think to answer your question, I think people are aware and understand the stakes. And I think people just to get by every day, like aren't keeping them at the forefront of their mind. I really see that's like what my job is to like keep a steady drumbeat. So we like don't lose sight of this.
Is the NCJW going to lobby for a federal law?
Well, we do support legislation in Congress. There's like which you can find on our website, which different bills have been introduced that we support. I'm thinking of like the Abortion Justice Act. I mean, there's a few really good things that have been proposed in Congress. And because, I don't have to tell you, because Congress is what it is, those things don't get a lot of traction in this moment. But there could be like Congress, the way that Congress could codify these rights, and we'll see. I mean, I think it's the long game with the federal bills.
So before we conclude, you're an activist. You've come to this out of not only the global perspective, my sense, but also a personal. So as with many people, this is sort of like, this is the right thing to do, tikkun olamne, but it's also, it speaks to my neshama because it's personal.
It is personal. Yeah. Sometimes I get like choked up talking about it, but that's okay. We're all friends. My grandfather, my mom's father, was an OBGYN in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And he, I wish he was still alive today for me to be able to talk to him about what it was like to provide care before Roe and after Roe. He helped find Planned Parenthood of Central Pennsylvania. These are only things that I learned about him sort of as I became an adult and after he was no longer with us. But I do have these really vivid memories of every time my family would go to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We could not go anywhere. I mean, no exaggeration, without someone, it's a small Jewish community, without someone coming up to us and telling us, like, I should be so proud of my grandfather because he either delivered them or delivered their children. And as a young kid, like, I didn't get it. But now I have been pregnant myself 4 times. I have 2 kids. I've experienced 2 miscarriages. One of those miscarriages was medically extremely complicated. As folks listening know, a miscarriage is like the same medical procedure as an abortion. And so like I was faced with, this pregnancy is no longer viable. Like, do you want to take these medications at home to finish out the pregnancy? Do you want to have a procedure? Do you want to come and have a surgical procedure? And like talking, thinking about those decisions, I was really lucky. Like I had access to the care that I needed and exactly what I needed that day. And now like post Roe, people's miscarriage treatments are being called into question. It's not just we're not just talking about people who, are choosing to end their pregnancy. And even if we were, like the idea that is often conjured in our mind, like people who need abortions aren't just like the irresponsible teenagers that society wants us to think. That more often than not, the data tells us these are people often who are already a parent and don't have the resources they need to parent the children that they already have. And so, because I've been pregnant myself 4 times and it just became deeply personal to me. I also live 1,000 feet this way from one of the country's amazing independent abortion clinics. And every day there were anti-abortion protesters outside, usually with like really horrific, awful signs that have like scripture on them. And so I sort of became aware at this time when like I needed to access DNC procedures when I was pregnant, the exact same time that like I was going through this personally, I was seeing the way people were using their religion for hate to like, and I sort of had this realization, like Judaism offers something radically different than what those people are bringing their religion to the public square. Like we can do this differently. We can show the world a different path forward. So that's a little bit about how I got connected to this
Shira
personally.
Zemel, you really represent all the most wonderful values from your own family, and that's a lovely story. And it, again, talks about the power of parenting and grandparenting and the influence that we have. Sometimes we don't even know it.
You don't even know it.
Our door from generation to generation. Shira, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so honored. It's really great to be here.
We'll keep in touch. Again, ncjw.org, JewsForAbortionAccess.org. Just continued health, safety, stay healthy, and just take care and say hello to the family for me, okay?
I will. Thank you so much.
And to all of you, again, thank you for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to give us an idea or a suggestion, please email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Likewise, if you'd like to become, or your organization, a sponsor of several of these podcasts, we'd love to talk to you. Likewise, if you go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and you'd like to help support our work, go to the conveniently located donate button, click on it, and just follow the prompts. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the studios of Lubetkin Media in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a shout out to our extremely genius producer, Steve Lubetkin. Thank you again for joining us. We do appreciate your time. We look forward to seeing you in the next Seekers of Meaning. And in the meantime, just stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy and be kind to one another. Shalom.